Welcome back, occultists, to another video. These stories may be triggering or graphic to some due to the subject matter. If you're new to the channel, make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And let's not forget, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. The festive season has always been a time of joy and warmth for me, a time to make cherished memories with my daughter, Lily. But one Christmas, the season of joy became a season of terror, an ordeal that still haunts my every waking moment. It started innocently enough, a trip to the mall to indulge in the holiday spirit and to buy gifts for the family. The mall was a spectacle of lights and decorations, the air filled with the sound of carols and the laughter of children. Lily's eyes sparkled with excitement, her small hand clutching mine as we navigated through the throng of shoppers. That's when we first saw him, a man dressed as Santa Claus, the epitome of holiday cheer. He was surrounded by kids, his laughter booming over the din of the crowd. As we walked past, our eyes met for a fleeting moment. There was a startling intensity in his gaze, a sharp contrast to his jolly demeanor. I thought little of it at the time, attributing it to the holiday rush. We continued our shopping, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that we were being watched. I caught glimpses of Santa Claus around the mall, always seemingly in our vicinity. It was probably coincidence, I reasoned, trying to push away the unease that was slowly creeping in. As we were leaving, he approached us. "Merry Christmas," he said, his voice overly cheerful. "Have you been good this year?" he asked Lily, who nodded shyly. He then turned to me, his eyes lingering a moment too long. "And what about you, Mom? Have you been good too?" There was an odd undertone to his question, a hint of something I couldn't quite place. I forced a smile, the interaction leaving me uncomfortable. "We should be going," I said, taking Lily's hand and walking away. That should have been the end of it. But it wasn't. The following days were marked by a series of disturbing events. Notes started appearing at our doorstep, each one more unsettling than the last. "I'm always watching," one read. "You can't escape me," said another. Then came the photographs, pictures of me and Lily at the mall, in the park, outside our home. Someone was stalking us, and I had a sinking feeling it was him, the mall Santa. Fear took hold, a constant, oppressive presence. I reported it to the police, but without concrete evidence, there was little they could do. I felt helpless, a prisoner in my own home. The notes became more threatening, culminating in a chilling message: "Your daughter will be mine." It was a parent's worst nightmare. I kept Lily close, afraid to let her out of my sight. The joy of the season was overshadowed by the shadow of fear that loomed over us. Christmas Eve arrived, a night that should have been filled with anticipation and happiness. Instead, I found myself jumping at every sound, every shadow a potential threat. As we were preparing for bed, there was a knock at the door. My heart stopped. Hesitantly, I approached, peering through the peephole. It was the police. They had caught him, the man who had been terrorizing us. He was indeed the mall Santa, a man with a history of obsession and stalking. Relief washed over me, so intense it was almost debilitating. But even with him behind bars, the damage was done. The innocence of the season was lost, replaced by a memory of fear and violation. Lily was quiet, the sparkle in her eyes dimmed by the events of the past days. We tried to salvage what was left of the night, opening presents and singing carols, but the joy was forced, the laughter hollow. As I tucked Lily into bed, she whispered, "Mommy, will he come back?" I wanted to assure her, to tell her we were safe now. But the truth was, I didn't know. The world had shown its dark side, a side where even the most innocent of figures could harbor sinister intentions. I lay in bed, the events of the past weeks replaying in my mind. The sound of sleigh bells in the distance was no longer a sound of festive joy, but a reminder of the terror we had endured. The story should have ended there, with the arrest of our stalker. But as I drifted into a fitful sleep, a chilling thought crossed my mind. If he had been watching us for so long, could there be others? Was our nightmare truly over, or was it just the beginning? The darkness of the night seemed to close in, the shadows in my room a canvas for my fears. And in that moment, I realized that the terror might never leave us, that we would always be looking over our shoulders, wondering if the horror was truly behind us. As I lay there, the line between sleep and wakefulness blurred. A haunting question lingered in my mind: in a world where even Santa Claus can be a predator, where can we ever find safety again? The answer was a void, an abyss that threatened to swallow me whole, leaving me to wonder if the darkness of that Christmas would ever lift, or if it would hang over us, an eternal specter of what was supposed to be a season of joy. My name is Michael, and my story is one that I still struggle to believe, a tale so twisted it seems ripped from the pages of a horror novel. It all began when we moved into our new home, a cozy house in a peaceful neighborhood, or so we thought. Our neighbor, Mr. Collins, was an odd man, peculiar but seemingly harmless. He was always a bit too eager, a bit too friendly, but we never imagined the darkness that lurked behind his amiable facade. Mr. Collins lived alone, a middle-aged man with a penchant for gardening and an unsettling habit of always being around. He would often strike up conversations over the fence, offering gardening tips or commenting on the weather. My wife, Anna, found him a bit creepy, but I brushed it off as harmless eccentricity. As time passed, strange things began to happen. We started receiving anonymous letters, filled with praises for Anna, describing her beauty in unsettling detail. They were signed "Your Secret Admirer." We thought it was a harmless prank at first, but the letters grew more obsessive, more explicit. I could see the fear in Anna's eyes, a fear that I shared but tried to hide. Then came Christmas, a time of joy and celebration, a respite from the growing unease that Mr. Collins' presence brought. We decorated the house, hung stockings by the fireplace, and prepared for a festive holiday with our 2 kids. But our festive spirit was about to be shattered. On Christmas Eve, after a day filled with laughter and family activities, we settled into bed, the kids asleep, their dreams filled with visions of Santa and presents. But our peaceful night was about to turn into a nightmare. I woke up to a faint sound, a rustling near the foot of our bed. My heart pounding, I turned on the bedside lamp. The sight that greeted me was something out of a horror movie. Mr. Collins, crouched at the foot of our bed, his hands on Anna's feet, inhaling deeply. The look in his eyes was one of obsession, a chilling desire that sent shivers down my spine. Rage overtook me, and I lunged at him, my fists fueled by fear and protective instinct. "What the hell are you doing in my house?" I yelled, my voice a mix of anger and disbelief. Mr. Collins, caught off guard, stumbled back, his face a mask of twisted passion. "She's always been mine," he hissed, a disturbing confession that revealed the depth of his delusion. The fight was chaotic, a whirl of fists and shouts. Anna woke up screaming, the kids crying out from their rooms. It was a scene of utter pandemonium. In the struggle, Mr. Collins managed to break free and fled the house. I called the police, my body shaking, my mind struggling to process what had just happened. The police arrived quickly, their questions probing, their expressions a mix of concern and disbelief. They searched Mr. Collins' house, and what they found was a shrine to Anna, photos of her, items stolen from our home, and more letters. It turned out that Mr. Collins had been a classmate of Anna's in high school, a fact she barely remembered. He had been obsessed with her since then, his infatuation growing into a dark and dangerous fixation. But the most horrifying discovery was in the stockings hung by our fireplace. Mr. Collins had snuck in earlier and replaced the candy with sharp knives and razors, a twisted gift for his unrequited love. Mr. Collins was arrested, his facade of friendly neighbor shattered, revealing the monster within. But the ordeal was far from over for us. The feeling of violation, of being watched, lingered long after he was taken away. We tried to move on, to reclaim the peace of our home. But the shadows of that Christmas Eve hung over us, a constant reminder of the terror we had experienced. Anna was shaken, her sense of safety irrevocably shattered. The kids were confused and scared, their innocent questions about Mr. Collins a painful echo of our nightmare. As I sit here, recounting the events, the horror still feels fresh, a wound that refuses to heal. We live in constant vigilance now, always looking over our shoulders, the fear of what happened a persistent presence in our lives. We thought we knew our neighbors, thought we were safe in our own home. But Mr. Collins' betrayal taught us the harsh truth, that monsters can wear familiar faces, hiding in plain sight, waiting for the moment to reveal their true nature. Our story is one of survival, of a family's strength in the face of unimaginable horror. But it is also a story of loss, the loss of trust, of security, and of the joy that Christmas once brought us. My name is Daniel, and for as long as I can remember, I've always been a loner. Distance from family and friends was my norm, a solitary life that suited me just fine. Every Christmas, while others gathered around festive tables, I found solace in the cold embrace of the forest, my rifle my only companion. This Christmas Eve, however, the woods had a different plan for me, a plan that would blur the lines between reality and the supernatural. The snow was falling gently, blanketing the forest in a serene hush as I made my way through the dense trees. Hunting had always been a way for me to connect with nature, to feel a part of something greater. But that night, the forest felt different, as if hiding secrets beneath its snowy veil. As dusk turned to night, a chilling moan pierced the silence, cutting through the crisp air like a knife. I stopped in my tracks, my senses on high alert. The sound was human, a cry of pain and despair. I followed the sound, my steps cautious, the grip on my rifle tightening. There, beneath an old oak tree, lay a woman. She was dressed oddly, her clothes more suited for a different era, tattered and covered in snow. Injured and barely conscious, she looked up at me with wide, frightened eyes. "Help me," she whispered, her voice weak. "It attacked me, but I can't remember." I knelt beside her, my mind racing. Who was she? What had attacked her? This part of the forest was remote, miles away from the nearest town. "Who are you? What happened?" I asked, scanning the woods for any sign of a threat. "I don't know. I can't remember anything," she murmured, her eyes fluttering closed. I knew I couldn't leave her there. Despite my reclusive nature, I couldn't ignore someone in need. I picked her up, her body light in my arms, and made my way back to my cabin. The cabin was a small, rustic place, a refuge from the world. I laid her on the couch, stoking the fire to warm the chilled room. Her presence was an anomaly in my solitary world, a mystery wrapped in a riddle. As the hours passed, she drifted in and out of consciousness, speaking incoherent words, her fever rising. I watched over her, a sense of unease growing inside me. There was something unsettling about her, something that didn't quite fit. She woke up with a start late into the night, her eyes wild with fear. "It's here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "The spirit, it's here." I looked around the cabin, the shadows seeming to dance in the firelight. "There's nothing here," I said, trying to sound more convinced than I felt. She shook her head, her eyes fixed on something only she could see. "It's never far, always watching, waiting to take over lost souls." Her words sent a chill down my spine. The forest had its share of legends and ghost stories, tales I had always dismissed as superstition. But in that moment, the line between legend and reality seemed dangerously thin. I didn't sleep that night, the rifle within arm's reach, the woman's erratic breathing the only sound in the cabin. Dawn couldn't come soon enough. With the first light of day, I decided to seek help. I couldn't handle this alone. But when I turned to wake her, the couch was empty. The woman was gone, as if she had vanished into thin air. Panic set in as I searched the cabin and the surrounding woods. There was no sign of her, no footprints in the fresh snow, nothing. It was as if she had never been there. Confused and shaken, I returned to the cabin. The fire had died down to embers, the cold seeping back into the room. Had it been a dream? A hallucination? My mind struggled to make sense of the events. I packed my things, the unease in my gut growing into a gnawing fear. I needed to leave, to get away from the forest and its secrets. As I locked the cabin door, a whisper of wind rustled the trees, the sound eerily like a faint laughter. I quickened my pace, the feeling of being watched overwhelming. The journey back to civilization was a blur, my mind replaying the events over and over. The woman, the legend of the spirit, the empty cabin, it all melded into a nightmarish puzzle that I couldn't solve. Once home, I tried to put it all behind me, to return to my solitary life. But something had changed. I felt different, as if a part of me had stayed back in that cabin, in the snow-covered forest. Friends and family noticed the change, commenting on my distant demeanor, my haunted eyes. I brushed off their concerns, but inside, I knew I couldn't escape the truth. The forest had marked me, its secrets now a part of my story. And as I lay in bed each night, listening to the sounds of the night, I couldn't shake the feeling that the spirit the woman had spoken of had found a new soul to inhabit. Was it really me now, or had the forest claimed another victim? The answer was a shadow, lurking just beyond the reach of my understanding, leaving me to wonder if I would ever truly be free from the echoes in the snow. The darkness of that Christmas Eve lingers, a constant reminder of the unseen horrors that hide in plain sight. And as I try to make sense of it all, I'm left with a chilling question: what lies in wait in the depths of the forest, in the space between legend and reality? The answer is a void, a silence that speaks of unspeakable things, leaving me to wonder if the nightmare is truly over, or if it has only just begun. My name is Sister Margaret, and I have served at St. Mary's Orphanage for the past 15 years. The orphanage, housed in a building that was once an asylum for the mentally ill in the 1930s, has always been a place of refuge, a sanctuary for those who had none. But as Christmas approached one particular year, the shadows of the past began to seep through the cracks, revealing a horror that I could never have imagined. It began subtly, whispers in the night, emanating from the boys' dormitory every Tuesday at 3 a.m. At first, I thought I was imagining it, the product of an overtired mind. But as the weeks led up to Christmas, the voices grew louder, more insistent. Curiosity and concern drove me to investigate. On one of those early mornings, I crept down the dimly lit hallway, the sound guiding me. The voices were a cacophony of whispers, unintelligible but filled with a palpable sense of urgency and fear. I reached the door to the boys' dormitory, the voices ceasing abruptly as my hand touched the cold metal handle. The room was in complete silence, the children sound asleep. I stood there, a chill running down my spine, wondering if I had imagined it all. The next day, I confided in Mother Superior, the headmistress of the orphanage. She was a stern woman, her demeanor unyielding, her eyes cold. "It's just your imagination, Sister Margaret," she dismissed curtly. "This old building has a way of playing tricks on the mind." But I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was amiss. Whispers turned to rumors among the staff, tales of hauntings, of spirits lingering in the walls. The building's history as an asylum lent a macabre backdrop to these rumors, but I was certain there was more to it. As Christmas approached, the atmosphere in the orphanage grew heavier, the joy of the season overshadowed by a creeping sense of dread. The children, usually lively and boisterous, were subdued, their eyes holding a wariness that was unsettling. Then, on the night before Christmas, the truth revealed itself in the most horrifying way. The whispers led me once again to the boys' dormitory. This time, however, I pushed the door open. The sight that met my eyes was one of pure terror. Mother Superior stood in the room, her back to me, her posture menacing. Before her, one of the boys, little Timothy, was cowering, tears streaming down his face. "What is going on here?" I demanded, my voice a mix of anger and fear. Mother Superior turned, her expression twisted into something dark and cruel. "You should not have interfered, Sister Margaret," she hissed. The reality of the situation dawned on me, the whispers, the fear in the children's eyes, Mother Superior's nighttime visits. She had been mistreating the children, her actions a gross abuse of power and trust. I stepped forward, ready to protect Timothy at all costs. "This ends now, Mother Superior. I will not let you harm these children any longer." Her laughter was chilling, devoid of any sanity. "You think you can stop me? This orphanage is my domain. These children are mine to command." As we confronted each other, the door burst open. The police, alerted by one of the staff who had grown suspicious of Mother Superior's actions, stormed in. They took her away, her screams echoing down the hallway. The aftermath was a whirlwind of police statements, investigations, and a deep sense of betrayal. The children were taken to a new facility, their futures uncertain but away from the horrors of St. Mary's. I left the orphanage soon after, unable to bear the weight of what had happened within its walls. The whispers in the night ceased, but their echoes remained, a haunting reminder of the evil that had lurked behind a facade of terror and protection. Now, as I recount this tale, the horror of that Christmas Eve still haunts me. The building that once housed lost souls, both as an asylum and an orphanage, stands empty, a monument to the suffering that occurred within. The whispers may have been silenced, but the memories remain, a dark stain on the spirit of Christmas. And as I try to find peace, I'm left with a lingering question: how many more secrets do the walls of St. Mary's hold? The answer is a void, a silence more terrifying than any whisper in the dark.